Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Quantum Bridge again. Welcome, Casper, and welcome back, Franco. It's great to see you again.
How you doing, boys? How are you?
We're very good.
Yeah, really, really pleased to have you back with us.
Same here. I'm really excited to be back.
Now, I know beforehand, just before we came on, we was sort of discussing different topics, and have we decided on one, Casper, or two?
Well, sort of. And
One or two.
these are big asks for probably ourselves as well, but certainly for Franco. So we'll see where we get to. We don't have a huge amount of time as ever, but Franco was kind enough to say that we could touch on the topic of the sort of two worlds that a lot of us find ourselves inhabiting at the moment, and the way that we're actually seeing that split and feeling that split more and more. And also, I'd asked Franco if he might touch briefly-ish, I suppose, on the area of walk-ins, because towards the end of our first recording, if people haven't seen that, please go back and watch it. But Franco did mention that actually he, or a part of him, an aspect of him, was a walk-in. And let's see if we can start off with something around those areas, Franco, and see where we go.
All right. So not exactly remembering where we left it, but I'll just kind of start from where I feel it should get started here.
Yeah.
So this gets into a really interesting area where we go between science and spirituality. And so for the audience, they just have to kind of jump into this and kind of let it feel the way it feels to them, because this is really going to be more on the heavy dose of spirituality. All right. In the near-death experience process, and it's not just in near-death experiencers, but it tends to be more likely to happen with near-death experiences, especially, but again, not entirely with people who have had these experiences at a very young age. You have this thing called a walk-in experience, and it's happening more and more in, say, the last 50 years. And the reason for that is the time within which we live in, which kind of dubs nicely into the two world thing that we will be talking about here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But with near-death experiences, typically what you will hear are that people died briefly, and in that time they went into this state of light that would be described by some people as heaven. It just depends on sort of how you perceive it. And usually there's a point where you either feel that you have a choice to stay or come back here because maybe you have some work to do still in this life, and or you just get pulled back. You have no choice. You're just kind of, here's a little glimpse of what you might remember as home, and you're whisked back into this world. So what typically happens is that you come back and you remember, you don't remember, and you share this information or you don't share this information. But what some people don't remember, and this happens in a very small percentage, is that there is a third choice. And that choice is that you stay, but you allow your vessel, your body, to actually be used, occupied, if you will, by another spirit. And again, very, 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 very small percentage of this happens. And it's done in a way that it's done so seamless that for the person who has a walk-in experience, they don't really know about it until much later in life. Okay. So that's that entity that takes or consume or takes over your body, if you will. It's not like a possession. It's not like any of that kind of stuff. It's one soul saying it wants to stay back, and another soul saying, okay, since you're not going to use this body, let me use it for the purposes that I need to use it for. There's a soul contract that says you will still use the body and experience the experiences of being in the same family and all that. When you come back, yet your purpose is altered because of that exchange. That's what happened with me. When I had my near-death experience, I was very, 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 very young. And I chose, the spirit that was initially in that body chose to stay. And another spirit came in to take that body and do with it what its purpose was to do here. The significance of that typically tends to be that the ones that come in to take over are not just people, not just beings, okay, that are waiting sort of their turn to live a life here on Earth. They tend to come from an angelic realm of the spirit world where they have a very specific purpose to be here. And the purpose that they tend to have is that they usually come to share various types of truths, things that are pretty heavy in terms of the way that they can be viewed relative to what people know today. And in my case, I should say that in history, those individual beings would tend to have been viewed as, what they are. They were prophets back then, okay? That's just the way that they were viewed. Messengers from God, okay? Because again, these beings tend to come from the angelic realm. And there's a whole piece to that in and of itself, but in the angelic realm, I'll just leave it really simple. Typically, the angelic beings don't come here and live a life in a body. I feel like even in more formal contexts of religion, that description is pretty much true. They describe angels, which doesn't mean you have wings, okay? That's kind of a little bit of a stretch, but the angelic beings do not typically consume a body, don't typically live in a body, a vessel, okay? They will usually kind of take an approach where they're sort of on the outside looking in, guiding people, which is why you have a lot of angel guides, and then you have the archangels, and then you have this other group, which is what I'm referring to, which in today's world, I would just call them like emissaries, representatives of God. And God is differently, this is, we get into a whole different discussion, but it's not this gray-haired old guy who's sitting up on a throne somewhere, okay? But nevertheless, it's an emissary, a direct emissary from source. And they tend to come here to share truths. And in this time, in this particular moment, there are many of them coming in through walk-ins, coming in through what would be called STEs, which are spiritually transformative experiences, because of the time we live in right now, and the significance of them being here to share the things that they know. So like in the first segment that we did together, I don't recall the specifics, but I know that the things that I shared with you guys were things that you did know, but maybe gave a little bit more perspective to, or a little bit clearer perspective or broader perspective, because
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What you heard may not have been completely the whole puzzle piece.
Yeah.
So in my case, my job was to come here and to share with humanity a lot of truths, and they weren't necessarily controversial. Well, it depends on who you're talking to, but regardless of how they're being viewed, it feels different to people. They can relate to it at a soulful level. There's something about the things that I say that really hits home. And especially again for folks who are getting through that first stage of amnesia, if you will, of going from what they thought they were to now this bigger picture of who they might be. And then that segues perfectly into excuse me,
Yeah.
into into what we're talking about in terms of the two worlds.
Do grab a drink if you need to. One question, maybe while you allow yourself a quick cough or a drink, to regroup.
Right.
Yeah. One question I have surrounding that is those beings that are coming in with their various messages and the ability to quote unquote move humanity forward and so on, and steer in a benevolent way. Do they recognize each other, and do they in any way work with each other?
Man, that's a good question. That's a really good question. And you want me to do this in 25 minutes. Okay.
Or less.
Or less. This may have been a piece that we had talked about before, but there is this thing called parallel realities.
Yeah.
And people are fascinated by that. Hey, there's whole, Hollywood movies made about Marvel Comics and Doctor Strange, I think it's Doctor Strange, who does parallel realities. Sorry, I get choked up about this.
By the way, just on that, because I find that happen sometimes when we are really speaking our truth. It may not just be our normal truth, but something that's coming through us. I often find that there are things that appear to prevent us from doing that.
Yes, and it's not even so much preventing, as I cough again, as I clear my throat. It's not so much it's preventing us, it's that the vibration within which that information is coming through is different, and it causes what we would view as a physical block. And so so it's just simply that more than anything else. And so it's not surprising that I'm having a tough time kind of getting this through. But so parallel realities, and I do remember briefly having some conversation about this. This gets into what's called simulation theory, okay? And which means in very layman terms is that we are all experiencing our lives as a simulation. And that is a lot to chew on when you're not really quite even sure what's going on in your life, much less that you're living a game, a real simulated game. So if you could imagine a simulation where there are multiple levels to it, and in each level of that simulation, there are opportunities for you to play that simulation either on your own or with other people. And I'm really giving you the real simple definition here because I see that we're already on the clock. So there are numerous people that have come, numerous beings that have come here, and specifically to move this ascension process in humanity forward. They are experiencing this reality, but they're experiencing it in a different parallel reality, similar to how you would be playing a reality game and you would be playing it on your own, and unbeknownst to you, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people right now playing the same game. And then you choose to, at some point, because you desire to bring some of those unknown people into your world, and you start to play the game together. That's how this simulation works. And until that time when those worlds come together and those individuals come together, they don't know who they are. They don't experience each other. But when their frequencies are at a point where they can bring those realities together, then they do overlap and come into your world, and you start to play the game both simultaneously and individually in your own world. If I hope that makes sense.
No, that was excellent. And it did make me think of this whole aspect of we have a channel, right? And we're inviting people onto our channel. And what we're noticing more and more is that frequency thing, that alignment around frequency. We are certain people, they don't come on immediately. They may or may not ultimately, but we feel that all the time, every time we now have a conversation, it feels that frequency at that time was right. And then you've got the broader aspect, as you're touching on there, of just a whole group of people that we can feel those people out there who are sort of waiting in the wings to come in and talk. No, I'm not saying to me or to Gary. I'm saying to put their message through our channel out into the world or worlds. You know?
Yeah, and again, this could get into the real mind twisting scenarios that in other realities, in their realities where they are the primary player of that reality. They have already been on your show. And
absolutely right. Yeah.
So in a different space and time.
Yeah.
It can get really twisted, but if you keep it really simple in terms of how the concept works, and you can easily navigate that. A lot of people don't understand what parallel realities, even the people that explain parallel realities are typically not correct when they're describing them.
Yeah.
Can we see how we get on with the two worlds in 5 minutes, maybe?
Let me just say something quickly.
You understand that each one of these topics can be discussed at great length for hours.
Yeah, 8 hours. Yeah. So I just because I think what we're going to have to do is, if Franco's so inclined, is we'll reconvene once or twice or more for that. But
yeah,
and we
will
get into that properly. So I'd love to, Franco. We both would, and I'm sure the audience would. But just one thing quickly, just to leave people with, really, maybe now it just has to be a slight cliffhanger, is that there is this sense, right, that now we're seeing and feeling, as I touched on before, this shift that a lot of us had notionally thought about, understood, thought could be a reality, and we're starting to feel and see that. And then also the interesting thing for me is we're driving it by the way we're spending our quote unquote money or currency or whatever that might be, the way that we're interacting with foods, the way that we're interacting with other people, the way even the transport we might be using, the channels that we tune into. So I just wanted to sort of, maybe with almost, Franco, you'll get the last word, but I have to leave it on that I believe.
Oh, you mean the last 15 seconds?
In the last 15 seconds, yeah.
Gosh, guys. All right. How do I sum it up? Yes, we are in a major shift. Yes, for years we've been talking about shifts, this, shift that, this is coming, that's coming. And the reason the shift is happening now versus even if you were to look back to discussions that were being had even a year or two ago, the shift that is happening now was something that wasn't supposed to happen for another 10, 15, 20, 50, 100, maybe even some people were saying 600 years from now. The reason it's happening now is because there is enough consciousness, and it doesn't take much, to recognize that the shift can happen, should happen, is happening now. Okay? It didn't take very much to shift that shift. Okay? Yes, it is in the way that people are engaging with their different things, but that is a byproduct of the fact that they are conscious, from a consciousness perspective, experiencing the shift. In other words, it's the consciousness of knowing that you're in a shift that is enabling you to have the awareness to interact with currency and food and everything differently. It's not that they're doing the currency and the food and different that causes them to have a consciousness shift.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, for all people who are doing all those good things, good for you. And yes, it keeps you aware of where you're at in the shift. But this shift is massive. And I will just leave, this is my cliffhanger. Okay. The two world cliffhanger is that the year 2025 is an enormously massive year. It is so big in this two world split thing that we're talking about. It's called the year of the reveal, the year of the reveal. And this is where humanity's consciousness is finally at a point globally where it will start to physically see and also spiritually feel something beyond what is now what we consider 3D. It will finally see and experience itself as something greater that cannot exist any longer the way that we've been told that we have to live our world.
Yeah.
The two worlds, the old world is going to start to die very fast, and the new world is going to start to exist. And they're going to do it coexistingly for a while. But 2025, there are so many things that are going to happen that year that are going to force reality onto humanity in a way that it never knew existed. How's that for a cliffhanger?
That was brilliant. Lovely. All right. I think we're going to get thrown off anyway. Franco, do consider coming back and we can talk about that at more length.
All right, guys. I look forward to spending 2 minutes with you the next time.
That's right.
We might have upgraded our Zoom package.
Yeah. Let's hope. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good, boys. We'll talk
Lovely
soon.
to speak
Just let
to you,
me-
Franco, as always. Yeah.
As always, a pleasure. Let me know when you guys want to chat some more, okay?
Thank you. Thank you
Take
very
care.
much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.